I declare the meeting open and welcome you to this month's meeting of Council. The recording of this Council meeting will be available to the public on Council's website for a minimum period of 6 months. In accordance with Council's policy, I will now ask staff to confirm that the recording has commenced. Today we acknowledge the traditional custodians of the South East Nation, the Malacadee people of the Yuin River and the Linuquani people of the Far South. We recognise their continuing connection to land, water and culture. We recognise that we have much to learn from Aboriginal people today who represent the world's oldest continuing living culture. We pay our respects to their elders, past, present and emerging. In attendance tonight we have Deputy Mayor Thorpe, we have Councillor Gibson, we have Councillor Armstrong, we have Councillor O'Neill, we have Councillor Jessup, we have Councillor Smith, we have Councillor Temby and Councillor Burgess. General Manager, would you like to introduce your staff, please?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. We've got the Director Governance Strategy and Sustainable Development, Matthew Grimsey, Director Infrastructure, Climate and Environmental Services, Lockie Krantz, Acting Director, People and Organisational Services, Tracy Hankin, our Leader Innovation and Productivity, Michael Glazer, Acting Media and Communications Coordinator, Kelly Davis, and our Executive Assistant, Sandy Rustel.
Thank you. Do we have any apologies? Nil? No. Leave of absence? Nil? Absent? Nil. Councillors, do you wish to declare any interest? Yes, Councillor Hammer-Smith?
Yes, I'd like to declare.
Have you turned your microphone on?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah. I'd like to declare an interest in agenda number 10.014/22, section 35F report. I put in submissions.
Thank you. Yes, Councillor Gibson?
I have the same declaration for the same item.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Councillor Jessup?
Yes, regarding 10.014/22 35F report, I also made declarations but believe under Part 5 of the Act I can participate in the general nature of the discussion.
Thank you. Yes, Councillor O'Neill?
Yep, I have a submission into the proposed planning scheme as well, and same deal, be able to be a part of the discussion with Part 5 of the Local Government Act.
Thank you. Councillor Temby?
Thank you, Mayor. I too have a declaration with regards to 10.014/22. I've made a submission on the local provision schedule. However, under advisement from the local government, Director of Local Government, under Part 5 of the Local Government Act, Section 52(2)(e) of the Act comes into operation.
Thank you. Do we have any others? I have one, and it is agenda item number 19.034/22. It's the resheeting project. My husband is a manager at Duggins. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, do we have any others?
My son works at Duggins, so I probably know it's okay.
No, it's okay. Yep. No others? No. Thank you. For confirmation of minutes, do I have a councillor to move the minutes? The minutes are confirmed for the ordinary meeting of Council on the 30th of November 2022. Councillor Temby and seconded by Councillor, God, I'm in trouble tonight, Paul Gibson. Yep. Do any councillors wish to report any changes? Yes, Councillor
There was
Gibson.
one minor change in the announcements which has already been adjusted and is up on the website.
Thank you. Thank you. Any others? No? So I put the motion. Those in favour, please raise your hand. That's all, councillors, and the motion is carried. Are there any legislative items, General Manager?
No, Mayor.
Are there any urgent matters tonight, General Manager?
There is, Mayor, two. The first one is tender TN 194, curbside garbage collection. So in accordance with Regulation 8.6 of the Local Government Meeting Procedures Regulations 2015, I report that the matter was not included on the agenda for the meeting as the tender closed on the 6th of December and evaluation and recommendation was unable to be completed on time for the agenda. The matter is urgent as tenderers need to be advised of the result and the successful tenderer needs lead time to commence. Advice has been provided under Section 65 of the Act and a report to be discussed in closed council.
Thank you.
A second item, also a tender, the resheeting tender TN 186 resheeting project 22-23, and in accordance with Regulation 8.6 of the Local Government Meeting Procedure Regulations 2015, the matter was not included on the agenda for the meeting as the tender closed on the 1st of December and the subsequent detailed further request for information and evaluation was unable to be completed in time for the agenda. The matter was not included on the agenda for the meeting. The matter is urgent as failure to address the matter may result in legal action. Advice has been provided under Section 65 of the Act in a report to be discussed in closed council.
Right, okay. Can I have them?
May.
Okay. Okay, so we've got recommendation 6.003/22 pursuant to Regulation 8-6 of the Local Government Meeting Procedures Regulations 2015, the urgent matter of the tender TN 194 curbside garbage collection to be listed on the agenda for discussion as agenda item 19.033/22 in closed council. Do I have a councillor to move that recommendation, please? Councillor Jessup, and a seconder, Councillor Canberra-Smith. Okay, so I so it's just that I put the motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That's all councillors, and the motion is carried. Recommendation 6.004/22, pursuant to Regulation 8-6 of the Local Government Meetings Procedure Regulations 2015, the urgent matter of tender TN 186 resheeting project 2022 to 2023 to be listed on the agenda for discussion as agenda item 19.034/22 in closed council. Do I have a councillor to move a motion, please? Councillor Temby and Councillor Gibson. Okay, I'll put that motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That's all councillors and the motion is carried. Thank you. Okay, 7. Do any councillors have any announcements tonight? Yes, Councillor.
I just wanted to take a quick opportunity to apologise for missing the November Ordinary Council meeting. I had prior commitments prior to committing to the election, was at attending the UN climate talks internationally.
Thank you. Yes, Councillor Gibson.
I have 3 short announcements. One was the STEM movie that was shown down at the Hub on Tuesday night, which was well attended with 40 people. We had council support for it, and it was a combined team putting it together of Circular Economy Huron, myself and Nell Smith. And it was really delightful to see the response of the kids, young adults I should say really, to seeing different opportunities for career paths in sustainable ways. You could just see on their faces how much they were taking in. A second announcement was that, not last weekend, the weekend before, I went up to have a look at the Grove of Giants, these trees up in the Denison Range. I've been bushwalking all my life and I've never seen anything like it, to be honest. they're seriously world-class trees. And the third announcement was thanking Lachlan Krantz for taking us on a site visit up to have a look at, I think it was Reeves Road up in Palvarata, and it was really interesting to see how all this wet weather is just wreaking havoc with these smaller roads, particularly on corners where the water just couldn't get out, and it really brought it home to me how important preventative and how much of a cost-saving preventative work is, because if you can just stop it washing out, that it saves you a lot. Thanks, Lockie.
Yeah, I've got just 4 very swift ones. Councillor Gibson and I went to Climate Cafe that's a morning event, also organised by Nell Smith and the Ziad Futures Energy team. I can never remember. And it was lovely. It was UTAS were there as well. Such enthusiasm and such sort of hope on the the lips and faces of those young adults. So wanting us adults to do better. In the areas of climate change and sustainability. And I found it sort of inspiring, motivating, and to continue the campaign. Also, like Councillor Gibson, I did go to the Grove of Giants. I went to the open day on Sunday. That's just my third visit, and it is an extraordinary stand. I mean, every time I go there, I'm stunned. I also accompanied Councillor Burgess on Saturday to go and look at the rail tracks that Robert Orr's been opening up down near Geeveston.
Yep.
Another sort of fabulous amenity for the both public and visitors. And also went along to the STEM film launch, which is lovely.
Thank you. Yes, Councillor Jessup? No, I don't think so. I think they're just... Yeah. Do you have something? Oh, okay. Do we have any other councillor with an announcement? Yes, Councillor Temby?
I was going to say that I did join Councillor Gibson and the Director of Infrastructure and Climate Change, Director Lachlan Krantz, on that visit to Reeves Road in Palvarata. And it just brought home the stark realities of the vulnerabilities of our road network and the impacts of heavy rain events on our budget. Unforeseen budget cost, huge problem out there that they've done a really good job of addressing very quickly and very efficiently. But it does bring into stark reality the need to look at that for our long-term financial plan and with our requests for funding, because these things will accelerate and accumulate in years to come. So thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any others? No? I have one or two. Parking. This week I received a letter from concerned shop owners in the main street of Ewanville. People need to be aware there is time limits on the parks, and it's sort of stopping businesses having people coming into their business or pulling up because cars are parked there all day. And we also need to, and there is a time limit on those. And loading zones, I've been asked by Kyles and by Kirk Ashland that the loading zones outside the florist here, there's always got a car in it that's not using the loading zone. Makes it really hard. They're not there for long. They need to come in, deliver their goods and go again, and they're forever looking for a park close by to get rid of that, to deliver their produce or products. So please can everybody park in the right spot, and no one is protected from that because I parked in the council vehicle-only park yesterday and received a little note on my windscreen to tell me I have one warning. So everybody will, yeah, no one gets away. So, and I received a card today. Dear Sally, congratulations on your appointment to Mayor. Landcare Tasmania appreciates the support Council provides for the many Landcare areas across the Huon Valley, and they wish us all a festive season. So that's really nice. So that's from Landcare Tasmania. So, okay. We're on to number 8, public participation. We've got answers to the previous questions taken on notice. We had one from J. Jordan Hofferman, Patch Sins, Amy Robinson. We had a question on notice from Mr. Reeve, that's been removed. We had questions on notice there. They're all on all the questions have been answered, so they're all on our website. Now, we normally allow 15 minutes for question time, and the same thing applies every meeting, is that keep your preamble down because that's what takes up the time. We can get more questions in if we don't have the preamble. So, would anybody like to come forward and ask or put their hand up to ask a question? Yes, Dr. Smith.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
My question refers to agenda number 11.01222, and it's about council workshops. I note that there was a council workshop held on December the 13th, and it covered a statement of expectations. I wondered if you would please explain what aspects of the expectations, behaviours and relationships between councillors were discussed or will be discussed, and whether it is intended that these discussions will result in a summary document that will be presented to a council meeting and then be available on council's website for reference by members of the public. Thank you.
Thank you. The answer is yes, it will be. Once it's signed, we didn't get around to having enough time to discuss it fully the other day because the first part of our workshop went longer than anticipated. So we've put it off to the next workshop, and then the councillors have time now to come back with any, because it's a draft, for them to come back with any suggestions. And then once we get a final document and we sign it all, we will be presenting that, yes.
It'll come as a report to council.
I'm gathering that, I'm not sure really whether, does it do that? Yes, it does. Yes.
Thank you.
Yep, no problems. Is there any, yes, Amy? Yep.
Amy Robertson from Port Huon. I understand we heard yesterday Huon Valley Council gave a no to the 4th request in 6 months from Huon Valley Zoning Association to meet with the General Manager. I've put in nearly 100 hours, I've counted nearly 100 hours of my time working on this issue with community, and I'm absolutely confident others have put in significantly more. This isn't at this stage a court process, as per the legalistic reason given not to meet with a community group. This is in the stage of contributing to a council decision, with formal tribunal later at TPC that takes into account that council decision. Now, council has an engagement policy of engaging with its community, and councillors know the value of different input methods to their thoughts and decision making, whether it's writing, verbal, creative workshops. So this is less a question and more a request. Would council please meet with the Huon Valley Zoning Association?
Okay, thank you, Amy. we've got that, yeah, okay. Do I pass that on to, yep, to you, Yep, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Amy. I did answer the question, as we did have the question in the AGM again last night. And again, it's more about equality as much as the process. So if we were to consult with one group, it would then be unfair for us not to consult more broadly, because that would just be one view. So bearing in mind we've been through exhibition and we've received a lot of feedback, and there will be an opportunity at the Commission to present those views, and everyone will have that. We've seen that it is a more equitable process for that to occur at the right time. And so that's why, and that's been the feedback, I guess, the last 2 or 3 times we've had the correspondence and request.
Okay, thank you. Do I have any other questions from the gallery? Okay, thank you very much. Petitions. Neil?
Excuse me, yes, ma'am.
Yep. Number 10, Planning Authority. I now advise that the Council is acting as a planning authority as at... Council acting as a planning authority. In accordance with the provisions of Part 2, Regulation 25 of the Local Government Meeting Procedures Regulation 2015, the Council will now act as a planning authority pursuant to the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act 1993. In accordance with Regulation 25, the Council will act as a planning authority in respect to these matters appearing under item 10 of this agenda, inclusive of any supplementary items. Agenda number 10.012/22. Planning application DA 113/2022, single dwelling and outbuilding shed at Flakemores Road, Eggs and Bacon Bay, C2-8131-17. I refer the councillors to the recommendation of this report, and do I have a councillor to move a motion? Councillor Gibson. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Jessup. Councillor Gibson, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Briefly,
Yeah.
I'm comfortable with it in terms of the planning scheme. I do have a couple of questions that I might put now, if that's all right, through you to the director. It appears that work's already started on the site with clearing site works and tank installation. It's probably the same work that would have been done under the Bushfire Hazard Management Plan, so there's no damage in this case, but I guess if there had been a need to change the DA or something, then there would have been unnecessary damage to the property. I guess I got a couple of questions. What's council's positions on starting work before approval? Also, this seems to be council officers seem to have had to be involved to go out and assess what the vegetation was prior to the clearing and do some work there. Is there a way that council can charge for that extra work? And the last one is, what methods does council have to encourage people to wait until approval's granted? And is there some way we can put that encouragement out in the DA package so that maybe a bit of carrot and a bit of stick, I don't know. But it would be good if people actually waited till they were approved.
Okay, thank you. I'll pass that on to the director.
Hopefully I've got all 3 questions. You may have to repeat for me, councillor. So through you, Mayor, council's position on starting work before approval. Council does not support the starting of work before approval. It's as simple as that. Council's charged with the responsibility for enforcement and compliance, and whilst we have limited resources and operate in accordance with our enforcement policy, certainly do not support works being done before. The third question I think I'm going to is that there were a number of inspections that were required to be undertaken, which were part of the compliance activity of council. So unless for specific action stated in the relevant act, the council cannot charge for that action. Council can issue relevant notices and orders to seek compliant outcomes, issue infringement notices, and in more serious circumstances, prosecution. Did I miss a question?
The last one was what we can do as a planning authority to encourage people to follow the correct process, and whether there's something that goes out with the DA package that outlines how important it is to be patient, wait till they've got approval before starting.
Yeah, it's through you, Mayor. It's very difficult to do that through the development application process, simply because development application, we assess the application that is made to us. The compliance and enforcement activities are the stick which are used.
Okay, thank you for that. Do I have a councillor to speak against the motion? Is there any question? Oh, you'd like to speak against the? No, okay.
Just a question, if
Yeah,
I may.
I'll come to that. Yeah. So there's no councillor to speak against the motion. Are there any questions or statements? Yes, Councillor Camber-Smith.
Thank you, Mayor. And again, it's through you probably to the director. I just found it interesting that there was a biodiversity code it appeared to be across the entire title, but that by having cleared without approval, that now doesn't apply. Can you clarify that? I mean, does by clearing the vegetation then negate the biodiversity code that's under the answer to representation 2, number 4?
Yeah. Yeah.
And if so, is there? I mean, what do we do? I mean, I understand 1,300 metres squared in excess was cleared beyond the bushfire hazard management area.
So I'd refer you, I don't have a page number because my markup is different through in there.
Okay.
I'll refer you to the first representation, the comment on the first representation in the report, that although there's been some pre-existing clearing of the vegetation on site, the application does not seek approval for any of that prior clearing of vegetation. There is a recent appeal tribunal case in 2022 which said that you must disregard that clearing unless you have some certain guarantee, so a court or something with jurisdiction has determined that the clearing has been unlawful.
Okay. So are there processes in place to investigate that at the moment?
Yes, so whilst it's not something which is considered as part of the development application, compliance and enforcement action is underway.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Temby.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a question about representation 3. In the comments it says the proposal does not require provision for an on-site wastewater management system based on advice from Council's Environmental Health Officer, as services connections can be provided from the dwelling to the packaged treatment plant at Eggs and Bacon Bay. Should that be read as services connections should be provided from the dwelling to the packaged treatment plant? Because they will need some kind of sewerage system if they're not doing a wastewater management system. And the other question is related to that, and that's with regards to point 14 in representation 4, where they're questioning whether the sewer, when it is connected, would intercept the water drainage easement. So the comment there says the proposal does not require provision for an on-site water waste management system based on advice, and it can be provided. So what I want to ask is, would the service connection intercept the water drainage easement?
Through you, Mayor, if I can take those questions one at a time.
Yep.
So the first question is that the application has been made on the basis that they will be connecting to that packaged treatment plant. If at some point in time that is not possible, it's not approved by the owners responsible for the treatment plant, then they will need to bring their application back because they need to address the on-site wastewater code. So that's a matter for the applicant in that respect. In relation to the easement, I cannot answer the question whether it does or does not intercept the easement. However, that's not a relevant planning matter that can be considered by council.
Thank you.
I have
Yes.
one
Yep.
more, if that's
Yep.
possible,
Yeah,
Mayor.
go for it.
It's just with regards to point 5 in the notes here, on page 14. Number 3, from point 5, number 3, that all stormwater runoff from all new impervious development areas, including roofed areas and tank overflows, will be no greater than pre-existing stormwater runoff from that area of the property. Or if it will be, the stormwater can be accommodated within existing or upgraded stormwater drainage infrastructure on the property. Is a baseline measured so that you are determining whether it is not greater than the pre-existing? And how is compliance monitored?
Thank you.
Through you, Mayor, just making sure that this is on. The requirement under condition 5 is that engineering design drawings must be submitted, which must be to the satisfaction of Director Infrastructure, Climate and Environmental Services and be in accordance with the following. So for stormwater discharge and detention for the development, show that all stormwater runoff from all new impervious development areas will be no greater than pre-existing stormwater runoff from the area of the property, or if it will be that the stormwater can be accommodated within existing or upgraded stormwater drainage infrastructure on the property. So the report has to first establish what that baseline is, and then the report has to demonstrate meet one of those two requirements in 3.
Thank you very much.
Yes, Councillor Jessup.
Thank you, Mayor. I must admit, I was a bit challenged by this whole discussion about this application from these people to build what appears to be a fairly ordinary suburban house, nothing particularly challenging with it. And looking at this subdivision, so it's Flatewell Road is a private road, so I'm assuming that at some point in the past, and I'd like to know when this was, this subdivision was created, so 12, what clearly to me looks like residential blocks, looking at page 7. So, and I suppose then the question becomes, with all the question about biodiversity and clearly an angle being taken by people that this property shouldn't be built on because of the biodiversity concerns, what role does council have in approving such clearly residential subdivisions to actually make sure that people aren't buying lots when potentially they're going to be told they can't build on them in the future because of some biodiversity overlay?
Thank you. Okay, through to you, Director.
Through you, Mayor, I just need a moment to
Yep. Find that. Keep going.
refresh my laptop.
Just make a...
Yep, wait a minute. Yep, we'll just...
Apologies, Mayor, just experiencing some technical difficulty. It's a very historic seal plan. So I don't have the title information directly in front of me, but it's something that was done back in the days when they're done completely differently to now. So it was quite an accepted practice back when building estates were first approved to not have a physical road created on them. And we have a number of legacy subdivisions in the valley which have these circumstances. The second question...
I suppose the second question, and you may have answered this, is would we now approve a subdivision like this without due consideration of the biodiversity concerns which are now being raised by representatives around that?
Yes. So I can't say whether we would or would not approve a subdivision. It'll be based on the assessment of the subdivision on the zoning at the time. But certainly having biodiversity overlay and those sorts of things in there, you would expect that a subdivision, if approved, would have, at least have building envelopes set aside. This is certainly historic.
Thank you. Yes. Is it a statement or a question?
A bit of both. It was just to say that the residence is a permitted activity, as I understand it, on this, so it's not a matter of saying no in any shape or form. It's more that it's the extent of clearing beyond the A, without first seeking approval, I think, and then B, beyond the actual what's required for the bushfire hazard management plan. So I think that was all my questions related to.
Okay, thank you. Don't need to answer that one. Okay, so do we have any other? No? Okay, Councillor Gibson, do you wish to close on your...
I have nothing.
Nothing
today.
more
Thanks.
to say?
Thanks,
okay,
Mayor.
Thank you. As there's no councillor speak against the motion, then I put the motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That's all councillors, and the motion is carried. Agenda item number 10.013/22, report on development application DA/40/2022 for 130 Winds Road Signet, CT-177833/1, and associated planning appeal P/2022/124. I refer the councillors to the recommendation, which is that that pursuant to the Regulation 15/4A of the Local Government Meeting Regulation 2015, this item be listed on the agenda for discussion enclosed as agenda item 19.032/22. Do I have a councillor to move a motion? Councillor Gibson. And a seconder, Councillor O'Neill. And I just go straight to, there's no councillor to speak against that motion? No? Okay, so I will move that motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That's all councillors, and the motion is carried. Agenda item 10.014/22. Report under Section 35F of the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act 1993 on the representations received by the Planning Authority following exhibition of the draft Yuan Valley Local Provision Schedule LPS-HUO-TPS. I refer councillors to the recommendation of this report. Do I have a councillor to move a motion? Councillor Gibson.
I'd like to move an alternative motion, if that's all right, Mayor.
Okay.
And just before I read this out...
I'll have to get a seconder first.
We'll have to say it first.
Yep, read it out first.
It's slightly, after talking to Matthew, the first dot point would have been completely unachievable, so I've changed it since then. But it reads now as, I move that Council defers the matter to the 25th of January 2023 ordinary meeting to allow councillors to consider the numerous representations that have raised issues of loss of rights due to the transfer of zones from the Huron Valley Interim Planning Scheme to the Tasmanian Planning Scheme, using the TPC methodology as set out in Guideline 1, issued under Section 8A of the Land Use and Approvals Act 1993. Part 2, that a workshop be held in January 2023 where council planning staff outline which transfer of zone would create a genuine loss of property rights under the change of planning scheme and propose ways to guide the transfer of zones to alleviate any loss of rights. And the third point is councillor makes a media statement that we aim to do what we can under the TPC regulations on this matter, and at the workshop, council formulates a communication strategy to clearly explain our proposal to resolve this issue.
Okay. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Yes, Councillor Camber-Smith. Okay. Yes, Councillor.
Can an alternate motion be moved?
I'll just talk to this one, maybe.
Do
deal
we
with
do that
yours
now?
first?
Does Councillor Gibson? Yep. Yep, mover of the motion has the opportunity to speak, yes?
Thanks, Mayor. This motion acknowledges the considerable anxiety in the community around the loss of rights due to the change of zone. Residents have expectations of what they're permitted to do on their land under the existing interim planning scheme, and it's unfair if the rights are removed due to the transfer to the new Tasmanian planning scheme. I thank our planning staff for the difficult work they've done in following the process as set out by the TPC to develop Huron Valley Council's local planning schedule. This has not been an easy task, and staff have had to deal with unreasonable criticism, largely due to the anxiety in the community. I thank them for their patience. The Tasmanian Planning Commission has given us until the 27th of January, and I think we should take all the available time we have to try and get this process right.
Thank you. Okay, so now you'd like to...
Thank you, Mayor. I'm not sure if I'm moving an amendment to the alternate motion or an alternate motion. I largely agree with the sentiment of Councillor Gibson, but I'm concerned that the middle of his motion is somewhat limiting of the discussion to just a couple of narrow areas. And one of the thoughts that some of us had, that the matter, and this is probably what the motion would read, that the matter be deferred to 25 January 2023 ordinary meeting to allow for a councillor workshop to be held to discuss new principles to guide possible changes to the Section 35F report. And I'm happy for Councillor Gibson's point 3 to stand as read. I just feel that the... Well, I suppose I need to wait for a second, or if Councillor Gibson's willing to accept that.
So, okay. So, do you need that read out again? Yes, please.
Okay, so that the matter be deferred to the 25 January 23 ordinary meeting to allow for a councillor workshop to be held to discuss new principles to guide possible changes to the Section 35F report, and then the council makes a media statement that we aim to do what we can under the TPC, etc., as per Councillor Gibson's point 3 there.
Okay. Are you right with that? So then Councillor Gibson, do you want to accept those changes?
I would prefer to continue. I think that we don't want to go into too much of a looking at everything. I think this is the main issue that people are concerned about, the loss of property rights. So I think it's better to stand with my second point in there.
Okay. So what would you like to do now, Councillor Jessup?
I suppose my greatest concern, there are in total 900 titles included in the 35F report, of which 544 have been changed, and a lot of them were the environmental living to the rural living zone, but 414 representations covering some 6,000 hectares would need to be individually assessed based on your motion, Councillor Gibson. And
No,
and, well, that's what this first dot point says, basically.
but that's the one I've changed, Councillor
First or the
Jessup.
second one?
The first one, and it now reads outline which zone transport for would create a genuine loss of property rights
Yeah.
under the change of planning scheme. So it's very simple.
It's also not just about the loss of property rights. I think the discussion we had at the workshop suggested that the whole basis of determining scenic asset values had to be reviewed, and that was one of the principles that we talked about. If we're purely looking at loss of property rights, look, that becomes a legal question which probably should be argued in the TPC. The community concern, I think, is about the principles that were applied to put one property into one zone or the other.
So
it's just a
what
little
would
bit more
you-
general, I suppose.
So
is
what
I'd
would you like to do then with your motion, councillor Jessup?
say. I suppose I would put that motion, I think.
Yeah, your foreshadow,
yeah.
no? It'd be an amendment, yep. So you'd like to amend it?
So I'm moving an amendment to
Yep,
Councillor
yep,
Gibson's.
that's right. So do I have a seconder to councillor Jessup's amendment to the amendment? Amendment to the motion.
Point of order, Mayor, if I may. Can I
Point
have a
of-
point of order,
Yeah,
please? Thank
yeah.
you. There can only be one motion at the table at one time. We have Councillor Gibson's motion. If in the discussion, Councillor Jessup would like to amend the motion, he can make suggestions, but we're only voting on one, we're only discussing one motion. He could foreshadow a motion. That is my understanding. I could be wrong.
Yep, thank you for that. I will pass that over to the director.
If I might clarify, Mayor, what has been proposed isn't a foreshadowing of a motion. What has been proposed is effectively an amendment. So what I understand Councillor Jessup is putting forward is an amendment to the motion. So it is proper to be discussing that.
Do I have a seconder for councillor Jessup's? You do, councillor Thorpe?
I have a point of order as well. Shouldn't we all have the opportunity to speak to
We-
Paul's motion before an amendment's put to the meeting?
No, excuse me,
sorry.
thank you.
So
No,
just to clarify, Mayor, an amendment can be moved at any time during discussion.
Okay. So now we have a mover and a seconder for councillor Jessup's amendment to the motion, to the amended motion. So then we take a vote on that.
You debate the amendment.
Yep, we debate the amendment. Does anyone want to have a question or a statement on councillor Jessup's? Yes.
Is it possible, I have to put my eyes on, is it possible to just include that the work, as an additional dot point under point 2, that the workshop will discuss the new principles? Something along those lines, to actually have Councillor Jessup's addition to be an additional dot point under point 2, and Councillor Gibson's motion remains the same, but it's got an additional dot point which includes what Councillor Jessup would like to include.
Councillor Jessup, do you accept that?
I think the broader discussions of principles certainly wouldn't exclude what Councillor Gibson is talking about in terms of loss of property rights. So I'm quite happy that that principle could be included in a more general discussion of principles. I just want to give council officers the opportunity to discuss a range of principles rather than just the loss of property rights. So
Okay.
I probably would say no, it's not a separate dot point, it's an overarching dot
Okay, thank you. Are we anybody? Yes, councillor Camber-Smith.
Yeah, I'm really sort of speaking against the term new principles because, I mean, as I said at our workshop, I'm actually supportive of what the officers have done. They're far more qualified than us to have made these decisions, and I mean, having explored this all in considerable depth, I think they've done a good job. However, there was an information vacuum at the start that led to a lot of fear and concern amongst the community, and the Huon Valley Interim Planning Scheme already had taken away a lot of permitted routes for new residents on some zones, including rural resource, and many people remain unaware they have a code overlay or can't clear native bush. I support the conclusions in the EIA report, which states that the new rural zone is not a like-for-like translation for rural resource. The former is considerably broader in its remit. But I also respect that Council has more time to consider the planning changes in the Section 35 report and to consider the principles that were used by the officers during that period. And I think I do agree entirely with Paul that it is the loss of property rights that would affect people. I'm not sure why we'd need to come up with completely new principles to address that issue.
I'm
Okay,
happy
thank
to
you.
remove new and just have principles.
Okay. All right. Okay, so we now take the vote on, if there's no further discussion? No? Yep. Is that, yep.
I guess my only point is that I really think it's opening a can of worms to try and redo all of this work. I think it's much more important to address the specific issue that is in the community, and so I foreshadow going back to the original alternative motion. Should this
Okay.
not get up?
So now we have a foreshadow, so I ask, no?
No, if the amendment is lost,
Yeah, when we go back to the
simply
original
revert back to the
one.
motion.
Yep, okay. Right, so we'll take the vote now then on Councillor Jessop's motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That's, have you got that, Sandy, or you want me to read them out?
If you could read it out.
Yep, Councillor Temby, Councillor Jessop, Councillor Armstrong, Councillor Thorpe, Councillor Burgess, Councillor Camber-Smith, Councillor O'Neill and Councillor Doyle. And against, Councillor Gibson. You're right there now? Is that right, Sandy?
Yes.
Okay, so it's been... So the amendment comes a motion, and we now vote on the motion, or we talk about the... Okay, so as the mover, would you like to?
Look, thank you, Mayor. As I mentioned earlier, there are still many representations that were declined under the ERA work that was the 35F report. They did create some principles in their covering analysis, which I do think need a little bit more exploration. And I think it's important that all ratepayers, not only those who made representations, because I know many did not, have been affected by this. I think it's very important that they understand the principles by which their properties have been zoned, and that we as a group of councillors, given that the last group of councillors said they'd rather it be dealt with by us,
Yeah.
I think it's very important that as a group of councillors we make a very clear statement of what principles we agree or disagree with, so it becomes our 35F report, not somebody else's.
Okay, so do we have any other discussion on that? Yes, Councillor Temby?
So I'm not exactly sure of exactly the wording that Councillor Jessop has in mind, but perhaps we could include something along the lines of that the workshop scrutinise the interpretation of principles in consultation with the councillors.
I don't know whether that's
That's been decided.
we've already been decided. We've already voted on. Yes. Okay. All right. Yes.
Sorry,
Yeah,
Mayor. Just going back a step, when Director Grimsey said the amendment's been voted down or something, and then we voted, I assumed we were voting on Paul's original motion.
No.
Okay, well, I was confused, so I would like to amend mine to a...
Okay, no, I stated that we were voting on Councillor Jessop's.
Okay. Sorry,
So how
I heard Matt say that the amendment had been defeated and we were now voting on the motion, which I thought meant for this one.
No, we hadn't, no, sorry about that. So how can Councillor Canberra Smith remove her?
We'll have that vote recorded as negative.
Okay, thank you. All right.
You'd like me to reread the motion there, or
Yep.
if votes closed?
Well, yeah, it's finished now, so.
So the motion was that the matter be deferred to 25 January 2023 ordinary meeting to allow for a councillor workshop to be held to discuss principles to guide possible changes to the Section 35F report, and the addition of point 3 of Councillor Gibson's motion, that the council makes a media statement that we aim to do what we can under the TPC at the workshop council formulates, at the council workshop we formulate a communication strategy to clearly explain our proposal to resolve this issue.
Thank you. All right. So now do I have to do it the vote again? Yep. So all those in favour, please raise your hand. That's Councillor Temby, Jessop, Armstrong, Thorpe, Doyle, O'Neill and Burgess, and against is Councillor Gibson and Canberra Smith. Thank you. And the motion is 1. Okay. We're up to the Mayor will advise that the Council is no longer acting as a planning authority as at 11. General reports. General reports and minutes are presented in relation to the following matters. General Manager's operational report, the planning report for November 2022, Mayor Doyle's activities report November. Do any councillors have their activities to table? No. There's the monthly councillor allowance table, draft unconfirmed minutes of the Yuan Valley Youth Working Group and the draft unconfirmed minutes of the Yuan Valley Health and Wellbeing Committee. Note, committee minutes have been checked by the committee chair and have been distributed to committee members. Minutes remain a draft and unconfirmed until the following meeting. I refer the councillors to the recommendation of this report that the minutes, that the reports and minutes from the period 1st to the 30th of November 22 be received and noted. Do I have a councillor to move the motion, please? Councillor Thorpe. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Armstrong. Councillor... Yes. Do I have a... Do you wish to speak to the motion, Councillor Thorpe? No. Do I have a councillor speak against the motion? Okay. Are there any questions? As there's no councillors speak against the motion, then I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That's all councillors, and the motion is carried. Councillor workshops. General Manager, would you like to advise on the workshops held, please?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So we've had 2 workshops. 28th of November 2022, which was our final induction, number 6B, which was on the meeting procedures, and also a councillor briefing on our lifestyles inventory framework program, that the management are going through, and also the the Organisational Cultural Index staff survey results. On the 13th of December, the statement of expectations, a discussion on the statement of expectations, behaviours and relationship between councillors, and also the local planning schedules, so some discussion on the finalisation of the process for the Section 35F report.
Thank you. Councillor questions taken on notice. There has 13.1, nil. 13.2, questions without notice. Councillors, are there any questions without notice? Yes, Councillor Temby.
Thank you, Mayor. I just refer you to the decision of Council on 30 November, our last council meeting, item number 9.019/22, which resolved the report on the petitions regarding breaches of code of conduct. And I ask if that decision of council could help us direct our communication with the community as and with each other, and also if it can be published as a media release.
Thank you. I will pass that on. Thank you. Okay, is there any other councillor questions? Okay. 13.3, councillor notices of motion. Councillor Camber-Smith, you have a motion. Would you like to read it out and call for a seconder, please?
Yes, thank you. Council writes to Forestry Tasmania, trading as Sustainable Timber Tasmania, requesting a suspension of harvesting plans in the following mature native forest coops in the Huon Valley: KD 045E on the slopes of Mount Tonga Taboo, FN 005D, otherwise known as the Franklin Forest, and DN 007B, otherwise known as the Grove of Giants, to provide time for Council to undertake an engagement and information gathering process on the potential effects of logging these and other mature Huon Valley native forest coops on the local economy and the well-being of Huon Valley residents. B, that Council undertakes said engagement and information gathering process by inviting and collating submissions from stakeholders, including but not limited to the Forest Practices Association, STT, representatives from the tourist sector, including Destination Southern Tasmania, local residents and academics qualified in biodiversity, fire resilience and carbon sequestration in native forests. C, submissions to be invited through the Council's Have Your Say website page and through social media and other publicity channels, and published on the Council's website. A report and recommendations from the engagement process be presented to councillors for consideration at the April 2023 ordinary meeting.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Camber-Smith. Does she have a seconder for her motion, please? Councillor Gibson. Councillor Camber-Smith, do you want to speak to your motion, please?
If I may, Mayor, thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, this subject's very close to my heart. I mean, we bought into the Huon Valley. My husband's Australian. When we returned to live in Australia in 2002, and the thing that brought us here was, you know, the beauty and the wooded mountains, you know, space to breathe, the natural environment. And not long after we arrived, we ended up spending 6 years of our lives campaigning to save the mountain above us from industrial clear felling, alongside many other community members. We had 400 people on our mailing list at that time. It was a long, hard struggle. Eventually we won, and the Russell Ridge Conservation Area was created as part of the Forestry Peace Deal. And then just 3 years ago, we had to fight again to demonstrate the great expensive impracticality of pushing a tourist and freight route across those same mountains. And, you know, my family's not unique in choosing the Huon Valley to live, not because it offers wonderful education options for our son, who was born soon after our arrival, or because we can rely on fast response medical services or a great public transport network, but it's despite the lack of these things that we've chosen to live here and contribute to the community and work in the area. And I think we still have it, understandably perhaps, because given our long history and association with forestry, that it remains a big employer, but it has become increasingly industrialised through the focus on high volumes and low values. The sector has hemorrhaged jobs for the last 2 decades. We now have somewhere between 39 forestry jobs, and that's self-reported from the 21 census, and 74, which is from the state growth model data in the municipality, plus a handful more in support services. I don't want to see those people lose their jobs, but neither can we keep destroying the natural values that we cherish and are highlighted in our community plan or a strategic plan, and are emphatically underwritten in the Living in the Huon 21 survey. It's holding back our tourism growth, and that's evidenced by the numerous emails that we've all received over recent days. Now, I know only a handful of those, I'm acquainted with only a handful of those people that have written in, which shows, you know, that it's evidence of the strength of feeling in the community. But over and above that, we have assets here in the Huon Valley which are completely unique. We have the biggest trees in the Southern Hemisphere, second only to the Californian redwoods, and they're unrivalled by anything on the Australian mainland. The Grove of Giants in particular is extraordinarily special, and it's irreplaceable. It's a remarkable density of rainforest plants, huge trees of numerous eucalypt species and ancient myrtles, and a regrowth forest is simply not comparable. If we destroy it, then it will be 10 generations or more that sees anything like it in that area ever again. To allow its ecosystem and that of other mature native forest coops held in special community affection, or which have significant high conservation values, to be essentially destroyed for short-term gain because we don't have the vision to request that they be conserved and held in trust for future generations to enjoy seems reckless and heartless. Once these special places are gone, they're truly gone forever. My motion is modest in its ambitions. It merely asks for a pause on 3 coops which people hold in great affection, and for Council to gather information and invite the community to tell us their views on this important issue. It's not an expensive exercise, and it's a subject we've avoided for too long. We have a duty towards the well-being and prosperity of our ratepayers and to endeavour to protect the things they hold dear. And I wrote to the councillors this morning, rebutting some of the statements that were made on the agenda here about the whether or not it falls within our remit. I note for the people who weren't privy to those emails here in the gallery that Council passed a motion 5-4 in 2002 calling on the state and federal governments to legislate to end the clear felling of old growth forest estate in Huon Valley municipality. There was also a vote in 2013 to condemn the Tasmanian peace deal, the forestry peace deal. So we've done this before. It's not new. And as far as I can see, it falls clearly within our remit, particularly given the huge alignment with the strategy, every survey we've done, every strategy we've done, every plan we've done. The thing that comes up again and again and again that is valued most highly by everybody in our community is the environment. And in particular, the Living in the Huon Survey 21, which was a council initiative. It had 400 people. And while we had a very low overall livability index, the Huon Valley was noted as being completely unique because access to the natural environment was an absolute and relative strength of our valley. And it was the one thing that people valued over everything else. I humbly commend the motion to my fellow councillors.
Excuse me, Mayor. Can I just ask all councillors to move?
Okay. Is there a councillor to speak against the motion? Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have a few notes in speaking in opposition to this motion. I have a few concerns that I wanted to share. My first concern is specifically in relation to one of the coops listed on Councillor Chambers-Smith's motion, the KD045E or Command E45E coop, which is currently, to my understanding, going through legal proceedings. So I personally think that any position council would take, should this motion be passed, should not be perceived to be taking sides, especially as both parties in these proceedings are stakeholders to council. My second concern is the oversight that the motion takes in representing what council's role is and how the ability to influence the sector can be perceived as high when we actually have no regulatory authority over the sector. I think if we pass a motion in response to a very valid concerns our community have raised to us all, it needs to be in a diplomatic and formal approach with the strategic aim in balancing environment, social and cultural benefits to the municipality. And I'm also concerned that if we pass this motion, that we set the precedent to continue to pass motions as more projects arise with community concern, which is important. So I'm actually going to propose to move an alternative motion that does not target particular COOPs or projects, but enables structured process and relationships for the Huon Valley Council to engage as a stakeholder with STT and consult with our community with strategic vision and managing important areas and balance across environmental, social and cultural values, which I will distribute to everybody now.
Okay.
So can we just clarify if that's foreshadowing a alternative motion or?
I'm just about to clarify that, thank you. So I'm just confirming it is an amendment to the motion, not a foreshadow. So you'd like to move an amendment to the motion? Yes? Yes, please.
So I move that the Huon Valley Council commit to working with Sustainable Timbers Tasmania and the Forest Practices Authority to understand how the framework of the Forest Practices Act, code and regulations can recognise and manage strategically important forest areas, and understanding the mechanisms that currently exist and how through these frameworks we can promote these important areas. B, the Huon Valley Council commit to working with Sustainable Timbers Tasmania to understand the issues from their perspective and determine how the Huon Valley Council could potentially support a cooperative framework for managing strategically important forest areas to Council and report with recommendations to a future Council meeting. And C, the Huon Valley Council commit to working with Sustainable Timbers Tasmania in establishing a structured stakeholder relationship and process in which annual engagement is committed to encourage feedback on their annual update to the 3-year wood production plan and allow for, point 1, identification of any specific concerns in relation to proposed or planned operations with or without relation to specific COOPs. And point 2, identification of issues that Sustainable Timbers Tasmania may need to consider in operational planning and decision making related to particular COOPs. And D, the Huon Valley Council officially engage with Sustainable Timbers Tasmania to request to be registered as a former stakeholder of its operations in the Huon Valley municipal area.
Thank you, Councillor Thorpe. Do I have a seconder to the amended motion? Councillor Burgess. Do you wish to speak to that motion, please? To your amended motion?
Yes, please, Mayor. I know there have been many concerns raised in relation to particular COOPs over the last little bit. We've all received some emails, maybe some phone calls, and I know Council has also received emails through its public email address. However, if I think we are serious about this, we should establish long-term processes so we don't need to continually move motions on particular COOPs or projects. I want to also reiterate the concerns of many are valid, and the balance of environmental, economic and cultural values has not been lost in the many concerns constituents have raised with me via email, social media, through council public inquiries, phone calls and in our community. I think it is an important component to note regarding this motion, as we should be building relationships with people across the spectrum of opinion to truly continue to move forward. I know that the Huon Valley community appreciate the strategic importance of forestry and its ongoing environmental, economic and cultural benefit to the municipality. This is evident through the volume of public comment and correspondence received by businesses, associations and individuals across the region in response to Councillor Chambers-Smith's motion. The Huon Valley Council, although having no regulatory authority over the sector, do have a role in working with all stakeholders to get this balance right and support our community's concerns. The Huon Valley Council are not able to dictate how forests should be managed, but we must have an interest in how the broader strategic values can be appreciated for the whole community. I've reached out to Council's Natural Resource Management Unit through the Mayor and have spoken with the Director of Infrastructure, Climate and Environment, and understand from this engagement that resourcing this alternative motion or amendment could be done in the existing budget allocation through the Natural Resource Unit. I hope this motion can be perceived as an alternative to ensure that the projects indicated of concern are able to have constructive community engagement, but also all other projects that may arise into the future of concern to our community. This will ensure that all engagement between our community and council can build productive and diplomatic relationships to achieve strategic outcomes rather than acting as a lobbyist. So following the consultation that I've had with the NRM unit, I would like to propose this amendment.
Okay. So now I go back to open discussion. So do I have anyone with a question or a statement? Yes, Councillor Jessup.
Thank you, Mayor. Firstly, I would like to thank Councillor Hammer-Smith for her passion for this topic and bringing it to our attention. And I think it is a worthy topic, and I thank Councillor Thorpe for his contribution to try to find a middle ground. It is a difficult area for local government to have any influence in, and I do wonder the value of collecting more information when we already have considerable information and there's considerable science on both sides of many of these topics, and it is, I don't think, our place to be putting ourselves in the middle of that. I thank Councillor Hammer-Smith for modifying her initial motion, and I think we need to be very conscious as a council of having a position that is seen to be adversarial to any part of our community, be it the forestry industry or be it the many people who have moved here because of the natural assets. I know of instances where there are active groups already working with Sustainable Timbers Tasmania, and the Franklin Troop was a good example. I had a long discussion with a person today who told me about the 3 landcare groups who are all working in this 56 hectare coop with Sustainable Timber Tasmania, and are doing things like signage, weed control and making tracks. I also know of other groups that Councillor Burgess is involved in who are having a positive engagement with STT around other areas such as the old logging railways. I do not believe that STT is opposed to a positive engagement with our community. There are other groups in our community, however, and some who have been trying to lobby council heavily, who I think have a very clear interest in ending the forest industry. And again, I don't think that is a side that we should be involved with, and that is a battle for state and federal MPs. And I think what's important for us from here, and why I am supporting Councillor Thorpe's amendment, is that it is in the interest of Sustainable Timbers to engage with the community. I do understand that they've recently been recruiting engagement officers, and they have an engagement group in Hobart. So they are not unaware that they have a need to form a social licence. So I encourage all of us as councillors to help build bridges between Sustainable Timbers and the many community groups who want to help manage and add value to these coops. And also encourage council to consider, and I think Councillor Thorpe has sort of alluded to this, to look at the resources that we have within council, such as our NRM team or economic development team, where we can actually work with those groups as an active participant to actually make these coops that are of community interest, a feature of our community and accessible to all members of our community. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Do I have anybody else that would like to? Yes, Councillor. I'll go Councillor Temby, Councillor Hammer-Smith and then Councillor Armstrong. Thank you. And Councillor Gibson, sorry.
Thank you. And yes, I agree with much of what Councillor Jessup was saying, but particularly, I would like to thank Chambers Smith for raising this important issue on behalf of the community. And I admire your courage and your integrity and the work that you've put into this. I really very much appreciate it. And it's something that is close to my heart as well, and it has been for a long time. I would like to think that it's not both sides. I would like to think that we are already down the path of seeking a common ground. And I attended the Forest Practices Authority Symposium, and they certainly are aware of the effects of climate change and the need to adjust their practices. They're aware of the high greenhouse emissions that are caused through the logging practices. I think that that basically we are currently in the process of identifying our community vision, and that's part of our strategic planning process. The initial consultation with the community has identified the protection of natural values is emerging as being of primary importance to residents. This is consistent with all our previous community research and Tourism Tasmania visitor surveys. Having been through the devastating impacts of the recent bushfires, these particular coops are considered by many in the community as being even more important. Unfortunately, they are concerned that the recent bushfires have reduced the supply for Sustainable Timbers Tasmania, and to fulfil their saw log quota, they have had to turn their attention to harvesting these coops, which many consider as significant to the community. Our Huon Valley Brand Strategy 1922 represents the Huon Valley as a unique and outstanding area of natural beauty in southern Tasmania. This document highlights the distinct characteristics based on those identified in the Huon Valley and Economic Development Strategy Plan 2015-2020, which includes strategic action to enhance and develop the Huon Valley as a destination for high-quality tourism experiences. The Tourism Information Survey 2021, Living in the Huon, which Councillor Chambers refers to, rates connection to the natural environment as their #1 priority. And our own land use planning is how we protect what we value and our aspirations as a society. The community vision will inform this process and our strategic directions, including the areas of sustainable economic development, including tourism and climate change mitigation. Having said that, I very much appreciate Councillor Thorpe's informed alternate motion, and I think that is a very good way to go.
Councillor Chambers-Smith.
So, yes, I just take issue with some of the ideas raised by Councillor Thorpe. We can no more get STT to work with us than we can ask them to protect certain coops. The real crux of this issue is the sawlog quota. We know that STT don't make money from these marginal coops. They've sat across the table from people involved in Mount Tonga Taboo and other things and said, we don't want to be in these. The best thing you can do is lobby the government to reduce the sawlog quota. So talking to STT, while it's admirable and we ought to be talking to STT, it's not going to result in these coops being protected for the generations to come. It's not going to result in the reduction in greenhouse gases. It's not going to result in increased tourism and walkways. What my motion was aimed at was establishing what the community sentiment was, because councillors at the last time I deferred this motion, made it clear that they wanted to hear more from other stakeholders and from the community at large, so hence my amended motion. What I imagined might be an outcome for that if the engagement process recommended that, was that we would then write to STT saying these are the sentiments that have been expressed by our community. These are the opportunities that we think are being missed by our tourism operators. We suggest that we write to the government and ask them to review their sawlog quota of 137,000, which is driving you into these coops, and thereby, and working with you to, in the meantime, to identify, you know, the handful of perhaps, because there's so few left, the handful of few other mature age native forest coops in our municipality that are held in particular affection by the community. So our aims are very much the same, I think, but I don't think this, respectfully, I don't think Councillor Thorpe's motion will achieve that, because we know people are already talking to Sustainable Timbers, and I sat across the table from them for 4 or 5 years. People are talking with them constantly. I mean, the people from Mount Tonga were talking with them, but then they had noticed with less than 24 hours that logging was about to start. And that was the result of the conversations they'd had with Sustainable Timbers Tasmania. So they, you know, STT are under huge pressures from the government. And unless we speak out and say, we understand the pressures you're under, and maybe we can help by signalling to the government that we think it's appropriate that there are effects on our industry, on our tourism industry and our local residents, and we respectfully ask you to review your sawlog quota.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Armstrong.
Oh, thank you, Mayor. Through you, Mayor, I've just been sitting here listening to all of this, and I think at the end of the day, nobody really wants to see those lovely big trees, you know, threatened, and I think they are a tourist attraction. I think they could be. I think in the Huon we have lots of tourists. We've got caves and pools and rivers and bush and trees, and, you know, we're naturally blessed, you know, with the beauty, and that's why we all love it here. But I'm also concerned, because initially I thought we were just talking about the Valley of the Giants, or the Grove of the Giants, but now I notice that we've kind of gone in a direction that I didn't think we were going to go in. I just wonder if council were to act and start to, you know, make noise about this, given that it's not, a core role of council to be in this position, does it cross into us beginning to then be protesters against these sort of things and the ongoing effect of that? And looking back, you are correct where council has actually acted before on behalf, but it was a different dynamic and it was a different time, and logging was a lot bigger than what it is now, and people were working in a very, very different demographic to what we have now. I'm really, really torn between wanting to go with you, Councillor Campbell-Smith, and I'm also torn between wanting to go with Toby, because I think both of you make sense. It would be excellent if somehow we could marry it all in the middle somewhere. I'm really uncomfortable with where council sits in regard to what decisions you make. I'm uncomfortable about the resources that might be involved that will be put into action, you know, if this motion's supported. I'm uncomfortable about where it leaves us with equality across different sections, and I'm also uncomfortable about, you know, the position going forward is, do we protest then against everything that community feels passionate about? And I understand that we are acting on behalf of the community, and I understand that it is a passion, but I think at the end of the day we need to be really sensible about how we go forward and support our community, because if we support every single thing that our community is ultra passionate about, we could find ourselves totally out of our depth with our council business and our core business and what we're here to do. So I'm personally having a struggle with this. I'm finding it very uncomfortable, and I like both of the motions. I'm not sure what we do with it. Thank you,
Thank
Mayor.
you. You've got the right to, yes. Councillor Gibson?
Yes, well, I mean, the Tahuan Airwalk is our biggest attraction, and we know that all of the people in the Huon love trees. I grew up in Sydney area and used to walk in the Blue Mountains a lot, and they get 8.5 million visitors a year to the Blue Gum Forest because that's the sort of level of interest there is there. So I guess I think it's a bigger issue than just a casual resident's request. I would like to put an amendment to Councillor Thorpe's motion to include a point E, that Council requests state government consider the relaxation of quotas relating to specific coops to which the community are particularly attached. So that's, and I think that's, other than that, I'm very happy to have a relationship with Sustainable Timbers Tasmania. I've dealt with them when I was working on Palawilagana project. There's some really good people there. They're very positive about community use of parts of the forest, but they said to me over and over again, you know, we don't have an option here. We have to, even though we know we're losing money out of going into some of these minor coops, we have to do it because we've got to follow these quotas. So I think that's the key part of the motion. So I propose that amendment.
Councillor Thorpe, do you accept the addition to your motion?
I think in relation to the soil log quota, it's a state government responsibility, and my major concern from the initial motion was giving the community a perceived sort of sense that council could become a lobby point for the responsibility of state government and federal government, and for some issues that's true, but not. I think when there is an avenue already for our community to lobby state and federal MPs, that I don't think I'd accept that amendment.
Can I just respond to that quickly?
Is that okay for him to, do we repeat the debate? Just
We lobby the state government all the time over state roads, over speed limits, over Taswater outflows. You know, it's just something that it's our job to represent the community, and this is just another thing. It's more political because it's got a history, but otherwise it's exactly the same.
Okay, so do you still not accept that? Okay, thank you. Okay.
Can we vote on that?
Can we vote on your
Yeah,
adding
I'd
that?
like to amend the motion.
Okay.
There's no provision for amending an amendment.
It's not
The process, Mayor, would be that if the amendment was put and carried and became the motion, then you could entertain an amendment to that.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Have we got anybody else that would like to speak to the amended motion?
Sorry, should I foreshadow that as an amendment to just so that other councillors know what I'm...
Yeah, that'll be fine. Yep. Okay, do we have any other councillors? So, I can go to the... Yep, you can close. Wait a minute, just hang on a minute. I might have something to say. Sorry, Toby. I was thinking I speak last, but I don't. You do. This is a hard one. And the tourist industry, I mean, the airwalk was built by Forestry Tasmania. The tracks that we have already have been built by Forestry Tasmania. Other countries, other areas have forestry and logging. We have trucks on our road. It's something that that's been part of our life. And I I totally understand that the protection of the giant trees. I have no issue with that. I just think that we would be taking on responsibilities that are not our core. We struggle to get by as it is doing what we need to do here at council. I just believe, as Councillor Thorpe said, that there is avenues for people to do this through state and federal government. It's how it was done, how it's always been done. I just don't believe that it becomes a council issue. So, yeah, I won't be voting for it, but thank you. I'll let you close now if you have something to close. Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor. I don't want to be perceived as not caring about this issue, because I do, and I think something we need to understand is that I'm not sure there's anyone that calls the Huon Valley home that doesn't care about the environment around us. I'm still to this day to meet somebody that would happily chop down a giant tree, because I just have not met somebody like that. The issues around resourcing that was raised by some councillors have been advised that this could fit into the current resourcing by the NRM unit, and I really hope that this can, if this motion is to pass, become a long-term engagement process for council in our community to actually positively engage in all projects with STT, which I think would be a positive step forward. And I know through engagement with staff, community members, young people, teachers, whoever in the community, I think there is consensus that we want to have productive and diplomatic relationships to achieve these strategic outcomes, rather than just be a lobby group that writes letters every now and then. And I think we could do that by reforming these relationships. And of course, through community consultation to work collaboratively on identifying projects or certain areas that are of concern to our community. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thorpe. Okay, so now I will put that forward. All those in favour of the amendment to the motion, please raise your hand. That's Councillor Temby, Jessup, Armstrong, Thorpe, Doyle, O'Neill and Burgess. And against will be Councillor Camber-Smith and Councillor Gibson. Thank you. Thanks everybody for that respectful discussion. Thank you. Oh, okay, the amendment comes the motion. Okay, so the amendment comes the motion, and now we will, I have to have just a vote on it, or?
It's an opportunity to have further discussion.
Okay, an opportunity for further discussion. Is there any further discussion? Yes, Councillor Gibson.
Can I propose an amendment to the motion?
Yes.
That council requests state government to consider the relaxation of quotas relating to specific coups to which the community are particularly attached.
Do I have a seconder?
Sorry, I didn't have my mic on.
Yep.
That council requests state government consider the relaxation of quotas relating to specific coups to which the community are particularly attached. And it is only consider.
Okay. Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Temby? Councillor, do we go normal?
Sorry, through you, Mayor, just an opportunity to clarify. It's the motion that was moved by, well, the amendment which became the motion from Councillor Thorpe, plus an extra paragraph
It's part E
at the end.
At the end. Yes, thanks, Matthew.
Thank you. Thanks for clarifying that. Okay. Do you want to speak to that?
Well, I think it's all been said, but I mean, I think this is the crux of the matter, and I think, you know, we've got a good motion here from Councillor Thorpe. I think building this relationship is really important, but with sustainable timber. But a part of that is having some flexibility around specific coups like the Franklin Forest, which, you know, the officers of Sustainable Timbers Tasmania are very happy for it to be used, but when it comes to the crunch, if they can't get a relaxation on their quotas, what will happen is all of the work and all of the love that's gone into that forest will be lost, because, and I've had this happen to me personally, with tracks, so we need to have something in there to request the quotas just get relaxed for small, tiny coops. It's not as if it's a big amount of timber, yeah, I mean the future of jobs in these coops is so much more than any jobs or money coming out of felling the timber.
Thank you very much. Do I have a councillor that would like to either ask a question or make a statement, please? Councillor Jessup.
Look, it is conflicting because I think there is some validity in what Councillor Gibson is saying, but I suppose there's two issues. One, I think it is a separate topic and should be a separate motion. I think the issue of council engaging with Sustainable Timbers to do some good stuff is one very clear concept. The idea of talking to the state government about quotas is a separate topic, and I think the language is also, you say to relax quotas, what was the exact term?
Consider the relaxation of quotas relating to specific coops.
The community holds here or whatever. I think my feeling is that that's too early, because one, it's very vague of what are you asking the government to agree to, and I would hope that an outcome of our engagement with Sustainable Timbers would be to identify these coops of community value, and then I think to work with Sustainable Timbers to lobby government to move them into some form of reserve, and I'm not a forestry expert, so I don't know the language. I think to ask for a relaxation of the whole quota system is buying into a much bigger agenda, which I think our ability to succeed in would be limited, where I think asking for specific troops to be added to some sort of reserve system, I think would be much.
I'd be happy to change that wording, if you prefer, to moving the 3 coops that are mentioned by Councillor Campbell-Smith into reserve. Ask the government to remove those 3 coops into reserve. That would be fine with me.
Yeah, I don't necessarily think it's those 3 coops, but I think A, it should be a separate motion, and B, I think the process should be to identify the coops that we would like to move into reserves. However we do that, I'm not sure.
All right. Are we completely changing things? Is that okay? Like changing it again, or is it? Do we have to stick to?
Through you, Mayor, you have an amendment that has been moved. If the mover of the amendment wishes to change that, needs the consent of the seconder to the amendment.
Okay.
Well, I guess the question there is whether Councillor Jessup would prefer that wording that he suggested.
And is it going to make, yeah.
I suppose I'm making a point that I don't support it as part of Councillor Thorpe's motion, and opening it up to Councillor Gibson to maybe think about raising it as a separate motion with some nuancing of the language.
Okay. So, all right. So you not to make changes. You know, at the moment, you'd like it to be something completely different. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. All right. Do I have any other councillor to speak? Yes, Councillor
Yes, I speak to Paul's amendment, if I may, because as I said right from the start, it is a sawlog quota, and it doesn't matter how long we'll talk to STT unless there is some relaxation or review of that quota. The only way we can invite that is to put a request through to government.
Thank
I mean, STT, I mean, it was very clear through the GBE hearings that STT didn't have any particular want or desire to be in these coops because it's not economically viable for them.
Okay.
But the Minister, Felix Ellis, was adamant that the quota remained. So if we really want to protect these assets for our community, however way we do that, you know, through engaging with STT, then we have to, you know, state a position that council would like to see the quotas at least reviewed.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Temby?
Thank you. Yes, I agree that we need to advocate on behalf of the community. They've made a very clear message in this process, and as I would like to reiterate, having been through the devastating impacts of the recent bushfires, these particular coops are considered by many in the community as being more important. Unfortunately, they are concerned that the recent bushfires have reduced the supply for STT, and to fulfil the saw log quota, they've had to turn their attention to harvesting these particular coops, which they otherwise would not have done in the near future, which many in the community consider significant to the community. And these quotas are an artificial construct. You know, I mean, there is no real commercial reason for them. And so I would like our council not to instruct, but to recommend that that be considered in the most diplomatic and respectful way, that we have every right to speak on behalf of our community. And I think this is a very important addition to Councillor Thorpe's incredibly good motion. Thank you.
Do we have anybody else to speak? Yes, Councillor Thorpe.
I just have some concern around state regulations for the sector, because we're a small part of the state, and most of the time state legislation is governing all 29 municipalities across the state, and there may be some subsections that affect different regional areas, whether it be north, west, south or whatnot. I just don't think council should be in a position to be lobbying the state government on a particular issue like this at the moment, but mentioning that there are other avenues like LGAT, moving a motion to go to LGAT and things like that.
Thank you. Yeah. Do I have anybody else? I do. I think we're now talking about things that we're not experts about, and I think that worries me. Like we can assume, and we know that we've heard, we've been at conversations and so forth, but to me, we are trying to move something that's talking about things that we are not experts in. So I am not comfortable at all, personally, in the addition to the motion. So we put the motion now to... Oh, Councillor, would you like to close? To your amendment, yep. Is that right? Yep.
Yes. I don't think you need to be an expert in anything to ask the state government to relax the quotas. I think that's a very simple and polite letter, and it's targeted to specific coops that the community has invested incredible energy in, and are close into townships like the Tongartaboo and Franklin Forest. Their value is actually mostly in that they're accessible to the residents of the Huon Valley and used regularly. So you don't get volunteers going in and making beautiful tracks through forests that are far flung, but when it's close to town, I think it's got an extra value. So I just think it's the crux of the matter, and there's nothing wrong with a polite letter to the state government asking for what I'm sure the residents want.
Okay, thank you. Well, I'm going to put that to the vote. All those in favour of the amended motion? Yep, the amendment, yes. Please raise your hand. That's Councillor... No, this is Paul's addition. No. Councillor Temby, Councillor Camber-Smith and Councillor Gibson. Those against, please raise your hand. That's Councillor Jessup, Armstrong, Thorpe, Doyle, O'Neill and Burgess. So the motion has been, the amended motion has been lost. Do we then go back to the original amended motion? And I will take the vote on the amended motion, or do I have to go through the whole process again?
It is simply the motion.
Yep, it goes to the motion now.
Yes, so it's a matter of finalising the debate on the motion.
Yep.
Which was the amendment put forward by Councillor Thorpe.
Yep.
Councillor Thorpe has the opportunity to close if no other councillor wishes to speak.
Okay, so now we are going to vote on, in a moment, on Councillor Thorpe's motion. Is there any debate on that motion? Yes, Councillor Gibson.
I think it's a positive move, so I'll be supporting it.
Thank you. Anybody else? Councillor Thorpe, would you like to close, or are you happy with what you've...
I'd just like to say that moving this motion doesn't mean I'm not opposed to working through other issues that have been raised tonight as well.
Thank you. Okay, so all those in favour of supporting the motion of Councillor Thorpe, please raise your hand. That's all councillors present and the motion is carried. Thanks, guys. That was very good and very respectful. Thank you. I can now move on, Councillor Director. Thank you. Okay. Got to find where I'm up to now, guys. Agenda item 15.032/22, review of the audit panel charter. I refer councillors to the recommendation. Do I have a councillor to move a motion? Councillor Gibson, and a seconder, Councillor Thorpe. Councillor Gibson, do you wish to speak on this motion?
Oh, not really. We reviewed this before and I don't think there's any changes as far as I understand.
Thank you. Is there anyone to speak against the motion? No? Are there any questions or statements? Yes, Councillor Camber-Smith.
Yeah, I was hoping to perhaps make it absolutely clear that other councillors could attend audit meetings without having to be invited. It's not clear from the charter at the moment.
Yep, thank you. Is it not clear in the charter? Because we have.
Yeah, it doesn't say that at the moment. It just says other councillors may be invited or staff members may be invited.
I think that we were told that we were invited to attend when we liked. That was the invitation, that we could attend any of the audit panel meetings. So I think that was the overall invitation. To listen but not participate.
So is it possible to make that explicit in the charter? Or is it not needed?
Can the director?
Can the director confirm that's the position, that we can just go along and observe?
Through you, Mayor, the chair has confirmed that councillors may attend the meetings and observe. It's not something which needs to be provided in the charter.
Yep, thank you. Okay, do we have any other? No? Councillor Gibson, would you like to close? No? So I'll put that forward. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That's all councillors present and the motion is carried. Audit panel recommendations 15.033. Is that the same? No? Is that different? Pardon? Yep. 033./22. Okay. I refer the councillors to the recommendation of this report. And do I have a councillor to move a motion? Councillor Jessup, and a seconder, Councillor Burgess. Councillor Jessup, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, I won't speak to the motion, but I have a question that I'll ask.
Yep, thank you. All right. Is there any councillors to speak against the motion? No? Okay. Councillor Jessup, would you like to ask a question?
Yes, through you, Mayor, regarding point 41, which talks about ongoing governance review process that will require sufficient funding. And item 41 refers to a review process. Now, are we talking about some form of, do we have an idea of what that would look like and what that budget might be? What are we anticipating the audit panel will want?
Thank you. If I can go through you, General Manager, to the Director. Yes?
Through you, Mayor, the review process, including the timeframes for review, are to be determined as part of the development of the framework. So we don't know yet what that envisages, whether that can be undertaken within existing resources as part of the ongoing structure that is established or will require additional budget.
Okay. Do we have any other questions or statements? Yes, Councillor Camber-Smith.
Just a quick query. Do we have a timescale at the moment for the Deloitte risk framework work? It talks here about a councillor workshop in January 23. Is that still on the cards?
Okay, thank you. Through the General Manager to the Director.
Through you, Mayor, I believe we have a workshop actually scheduled on the 1st of February next year. We haven't got the final date for the completion of the project plan, but it will be completed this financial year.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, do I have any others? No? Councillor Jessup, would you like to have a closing statement?
Thank you, Mayor. Just a quick closing statement. All councillors, I think Councillor Thorpe, had the opportunity to meet with the auditors in a workshop, and I was reassured that both auditors were taking an extremely professional approach to their role. I think they did identify that an overarching risk strategy is a vulnerability at the moment. I think the point was well made that risk at a operational level is well managed, but as a governance group we don't have that helicopter view, if you want to call it that. So I encourage councillors to support the motion and support the audit panel with their good work. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Okay. Yes?
Can I just clarify, it wasn't our auditors, it was just the two independent members of our audit panel.
Yes.
Just for clarity, so anyone else watching?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right. So that we've clarified that it was our independent people on the audit panel.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. All right. So I'd like to now put the motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That's all councillors, and the motion is carried. Financial report 16.018/22. I refer councillors to the recommendation of this report. Do I have a councillor to move a motion? Councillor Armstrong, a seconder. Councillor Gibson. Councillor Armstrong, do you wish to speak to this motion?
No, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Do I have any councillors speak against the motion? Is there any questions? Yes, Councillor Camber-Smith.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Under point 20, it talks about that we will be able to recoup a certain amount of disaster assistance funding. So will that actually go some way to alleviating the 2.9 million deficit? Do we have any idea of the scale of money we're talking? I mean, are we talking about that we'd actually get that 350,000 back from the government.
All right, thank you. Through you, General Manager, to the Acting Director. Is that right? You can do that one? Okay, thank you.
We don't know what the amount is at this point, so we're still working through that with the government.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so there's no more questions? Yes, Councillor Jessel?
Just a quick one. And a point of clarification, if I'm reading this right. So it looks like our deficit has increased on the monthly forecast by $50,000, but we are looking at favourable increases in both interest and increased federal assistance grants of about 500,000. So are we actually, is our deficit $500,000 worse, or am I misreading that?
Through to you, General Manager.
Yeah, I'll pass that just on to our Acting Director.
Checking. Through you, Mayor.
Yes.
The report, as it states, includes adjustments to the interest rate. Yeah. So if we list on page 3 and page 4, it goes through all the adjustments to that forecast. So it includes an initial adjustment to the interest. Obviously, that will be further reviewed at the end of December. But all the other things. So we get to the total difference of $55,000.
Beg your pardon?
Right, thank you.
Thank you, no problems. Okay, do I have any other? Councillor Armstrong, do you want to close?
No, thank you, Mayor.
Okay. So, I will put the motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That's all councillors, and the motion is carried. We're up to the Surges Bay Hall Committee membership, 18.004/22. I ask all councillors to have a look at the recommendation. Do I have a councillor to move a motion? Councillor Camber-Smith, a seconder, Councillor Burgess. Councillor Camber-Smith, would you like to speak to the motion? Thank you. Do I have any other statements or questions? Yes, Councillor Temby.
Thank you. And I thank the committee. They've put a lot of work into actually revitalising the committee, and obviously they've got some important things that they need to address. Obviously, if you're going to have functions at a hall, you need to have the number of chairs, and you need to have heating, and so if we're going to have successful halls, we need to make sure that they're fully equipped. And I just wanted to say thank you to the committee for their great work.
Thank you. Do we have any other? I'd just like to say that I went to their Christmas party on Sunday, and they are trying really, really hard to bring this great hall back to life, and we've actually got some really good young families there that are doing it. So, yeah, we're very fortunate to have that. They had 40, 50 people there with Santa Claus and with the ice cream van for free. So it was really well done. They've done a good job. Okay, Councillor Camber-Smith, do you want to have a closing? Okay, thank you. So I'll put all those in favour, please raise your hand. That's all councillors, and the motion's been carried. Okay.
Yep,
All good?
Yep.
So we're into close now, aren't we? It's that time again to advise that the council is about to go into closed council. Thank you to the people that have joined us from the gallery this evening and those who took the time to watch the meeting online. The next meeting of the ordinary meeting of council is Wednesday the 25th of July and the 25th of January. Sorry guys. And the councillors and I would sincerely like to wish you all a very safe and happy Christmas, and we hope you all get time to spend quality time with your families. So, and think of the ones that don't. So we gave our hampers to the Salvation Army today, and that was very rewarding. There was 40 odd hampers that the councillors and the mayor got the food for. So yeah, it's really not humble. So thank you guys for coming and participating, and we'll see you next year. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks. Thanks, Caleb. See you later. Yes, that's correct. The recommendation 19.029/22 is that the meeting now be closed to the public as at 8:05. Pursuant to Regulation 15 of the Meeting Procedure Regulations to discuss the following matters: confirmation of closed minutes, general reports closed council, and reports on development applications at Winns Road. And the two urgent matters. They are the resheeting tender and the curbside garbage collection tender. Do I have a councillor to move the motion, please? Councillor Jessup, and a seconder, Councillor Burgess. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That's all councillors, and the motion is carried. In accordance with the Huon Valley's audio recording of the council meeting policy, recording of the open session of the meeting ceased at